Alright, hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be eating various forms of Mexican food while I talk about the Craigslist Killer. So, what I have here is the mole burrito, and it's got chicken, rice, beans, guacamole inside, topped with like some sour cream and mole sauce. These are like their own homemade version of flautas, I guess. They're just like chicken wrapped in tortilla and deep fried. Churros with 3 various dipping sauces. I think this is raspberry, caramel, and chocolate. And these are jalapeno poppers, which are super bomb, and they come with the raspberry sauce, which is super bomb, and then chips and guac. So I am going to try this. I've not ever tried a mole burrito or anything with mole sauce on it. I think I'm saying that right. That has chicken in here, right? Because it does. It has chicken. In case I didn't say that. Oh my gosh, this is so hard to do. That is pretty good. Okay. These are aggressive pieces of chicken. Okay, so I think I'm just gonna start talking about today's story. Hopefully it's not too long. So the whole thing kind of started when this woman one night was offering her, I guess, her escort services on Craigslist, and she ended up being robbed at gunpoint in a hotel. So she called the police and obviously filed a report and everything. This all took place in Boston, I think in the year 2009. So pretty good. And so after she had filed the report, about 4 days later, they found another woman who gave similar services, but hers were more in the massage area, I guess. She was found murdered in a hotel room. She was 26 years old, and her name was Jalissa. So the police catch wind of this. They're like, huh, that's kind of weird that these two people have both, you know, with similar jobs, have had like a similar experience, only, you know, one of them died, so it wasn't really that similar. But they started investigating and found out that both of these women had put up ads on Craigslist. And that's how they were advertising their services. So when this one, when the woman who survived, obviously, the one who gave the statement, she had told the police that there was, basically how it went down was he came in, tied her up with zip ties, robbed her pulled a gun out, started robbing her, saying that he didn't have any money. He just like didn't like want to hurt her or anything, and he just needed the help. So he took 2 pairs of her underwear, all of her money, and then he left. And so this girl's just like, now Jalissa was a different story, because obviously it ended in her losing her life ultimately. But I guess what was kind of interesting about both of these robberies and the one murder was that the killer didn't care to hide his face to the woman whom he robbed or to the like security cameras in the hotels, because both of them happened at hotels. So he basically like, one, he wasn't taking precautions of not getting caught, and kind of seemed like he just really didn't care if he did. Which is actually super common with serial killers, because they have kind of like this thought of that they're, I guess they can get away with anything, and that they're higher than the law, and that they don't have to be afraid, and like they'll basically never get caught. But the thing about this guy was that in some of the cases where he did actually rob someone and then didn't kill them, he seemed like he was almost helpless, to the point where like he had to rob them because he needed the money and there was like nothing else that he could do. And then other times, like where obviously he killed the people, it was just kind of like in cold blood. So it's like, it seems like there's 2 different people. The next case happens in another city with a similar type of ad on Craigslist, of a woman who is I guess like a stripper in her like actual job, but like in her off time, she puts ads on Craigslist to give lap dances, and like, it's not the promise of anything further than a lap dance, but I guess like you don't really know unless you were in that situation with her, so. The interesting thing about her was her husband was her boss or her pimp. So he had kind of like a close eye on her, and wherever she was, he was, because they went everywhere together. They were married. And somebody responded to this ad of her giving a lap dance in this hotel. Somebody shows up, starts to tie her up with the same zip ties that were used in the last 2 cases. He pulls out a gun, and then her phone rings. And it kind of like startles him, kind of like, he's like, who's that? Like, who's calling you? Come to find out it was her husband. So he stayed around. Every time this happened, she would shoot him a text, be like, hey, everything's fine, nothing's wrong. And then he'd go on his merry way while she's like making the money. So she doesn't respond, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna head up there and see what's going on. And so he heads up to the room, sees a man with his wife at gunpoint, and he just like takes off out of the room, starts running down the hallway, and then the guy who was robbing the woman runs out down the opposite end of the hallway, facing all of the cameras, like not caring who sees him, what happens. Like, he wasn't trying to hide his identity whatsoever. So eventually, police caught wind of this. They're like, this just happened over in Boston, like, how is it here? Is this guy here, kind of thing? And the police station gets a call from one of Jalissa's friends, the woman who is now deceased. So Jalissa's friend was able to recover some of the messages that were sent between Jalissa and the person who she met up with the night of her death. Comes to find out, somebody had responded to her ad on Craigslist. And the rest is history. They get the IP address of the computer that sent the emails to Jalissa. So finally, after all this time, the police were like, oh my gosh, we have something. Other than like these grainy pictures or somebody's recollection of their robber. And it takes them to a small apartment in Boston that belonged to the name of Philip Markoff. An early 20s med school student from the University of Boston. And they were just like, this is super strange, like we wouldn't guess this. So the police stay outside, they camp outside of his apartment and wait for somebody to come out the next morning. Lo and behold, Philip Markoff walks out. Matches the description perfectly of this 6 foot tall, blonde, young, attractive male. And they were like, oh my gosh, we finally have a name. So as soon as the police go in to bring him in for questioning, basically like arrest him and put him on trial, they find out that he and his now fiance, Megan McAllister, who was also a med student, were headed somewhere in their car. And they were just like, oh my gosh, like, for one, they don't want them to leave the state because then they're out of their jurisdiction and they can't do anything about it. And they're just like, okay, well, we have to catch him, like, before they get too far. So the police pull over their car, saying like, hey, there's a warrant out for this plate number. And Philip Markoff, you're under arrest for such and such. Basically the murder of this woman and the 2 armed robberies of these. So the police grab Philip. His fiance is just losing her mind because she's like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. This isn't Philip, like, you guys have the wrong guy. So they were like, we don't really see a reason to hold you, so you can leave, and we're basically like, we're done with you. And so Megan, his fiance, flies back to Jersey to stay with her parents. So Philip is put on trial. They start doing some investigation, kind of like further into like the life before all these crimes started happening. So they were like, okay, well, like, what's his financial situation? Like, what's his living situation, kind of thing. So they're looking into it, and they find out that he was a rather heavy gambler. And he was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. So they're like, okay, well, hey, there's the motive for robbing these people and taking their money and their belongings, right? And they were like, but like, why did he kill somebody? And why did he let these other people, these 2 women were fine and they were let off the hook, but then this one, like, she didn't make it out. Like, what's up with that? So, they get a warrant from the judge and they head over to Philip's apartment where they start going through like all of his stuff, and they find a gun that matches the gun that was used at the crime scene with Philip's fingerprints. They found zip ties that were the same zip ties that were used to hold down the victims. You know, the computer was already there with the same IP address that was used to email Jalissa. So it's just kind of like once you find that kind of evidence, especially once you find the gun with the fingerprints that was used at the crime scene and it can be confirmed, like, okay, well, that's him, you know, like, there's no question about it. I've also never had a churro before, so I don't know which sauce to try, but I'm gonna try each. They're crunchier than I thought they would be. Like, it's pretty hard. The chocolate sauce is like minty. I think they're supposed to like drizzle all 3 of them on this, and that's like, you're supposed to have an experience different than what I am, but that caramel sauce tasted weird too. Strawberry sauce, not raspberry sauce. Tastes like strawberries though. They did a good job. I kind of want to try like dipping all of them, but I don't want to like ruin the sauce. Maybe if I do like a... We're getting crafty. I could see that being good. Sorry, my camera cut out and I didn't notice, so that's cool. I have to go back and talk about all the things I literally just did. So, anyway, they have all of the proof that they need to put this guy away, right? And, so when they were questioning him, basically they were just like, why did you do it, and why did you kill Jalissa, and like, you let these other 2 people go, and it seemed like maybe you were having some regrets at different times. And he's just kind of like, in the videos of him in court, he's just kind of like very calm, and that's kind of like one of the key things for like how you know somebody is kind of like a psychopath, or a lot of serial killers have this in common, is that they're just like very calm and they know what they're doing. So it's not like somebody who's afraid of something and they panic and then all of a sudden they, you know, like they shoot the gun and then they freak out, get the adrenaline rush, and then they try to hide the body. Like, he's just very calm and kind of weird. And they put him away, and his fiance Megan comes to visit him one time in jail. Now, while she's talking to Philip, she's like, you know, asking all the same questions that everybody else did. Like, why did you do it? I never saw this coming. And she told him that she would never come visit him again. And that obviously kind of sent him into like a spiral where he got really depressed and later tried to take his life. And so they put him on suicide watch. Kind of like in an isolation chamber on suicide watch. Once they deemed that he was safe to come back out and kind of like mingle with the people, he started kind of like having a normal life in jail, I guess you could say. Like talking with the people and getting along with all of the other, all of his cellmates. I guess not cellmates, but like jailmates. And one night, he took some razors, like shaving razors. He took some plastic bags, some duct tape, some paper towel, or some toilet paper, one of the two. He tied the bags with the tape around all of his major arteries, swallowed a bunch of toilet paper, and cut himself open. Now the reason for the toilet paper was so that when they tried to resuscitate him, they couldn't, so like he was dead. They didn't catch it because he covered himself with a blanket and he just like laid down and died slowly, with pictures of his fiance all over his cell walls. So I guess moral of the story is we don't really know why he did it other than the motive for money. He was in a lot of debt. He had a wedding coming up. Loved his wife very much. Obviously, you know, she was his last dying thought. But why he killed some and didn't kill others, I guess it had to do with him maybe having second thoughts. I don't know. Well, that's all I have for today, so please like and subscribe. I put out new videos whenever I make them. I'll see you guys later.